I've seen a lot of posts online recently to the tune of, "This billionaire has the net worth to pay for a home for everyone in America." I love seeing these posts because it's a very easy way to understand and demonstrate how much money billionaires have and the implicit selfishness of having that much money. But what I don't see a lot of is an examination of what net worth actually means, because there are a few misunderstandings that people seem to have. Net worth is a fairly dubious figure, and it can change depending on who's doing the calculating. Furthermore, unlike in the memes seen online might lead one to believe, net worth is not an expression of how much money a person has. Net worth is most often described economically by a person's assets versus their liabilities, namely their stuff versus their debt. This seems simple, but it can quickly get very complex with things like mortgages, loans, credit. Let's take a basic example. Say you have $100 in your bank account and your only possession is a car that has a market value of $1,000. Your net worth then would be $1,100. If you still owed money for a car loan on that car, then your new net worth would be $1,100 minus whatever you still owed. If you owed $500, for instance, then your net worth would drop to $600. This is a simple example, and generally calculating net worth is fairly straightforward when it comes to the normal person. But throw a billionaire into the mix and things quickly get complex. See, a billionaire's net worth leaves a lot out of the equation. For example, from the figure of net worth, you can't see everything that the billionaire owns. You can't see their debts, and you can't see how much of that is in liquid assets, i.e. money that can be spent right now. Alone, it's less like a scientific figure and more like a score. It's not meaningfully representative of the billionaire's actual real money, because for all we know, Jeff Bezos' net worth could all be tied up in solid gold statues of his penis he keeps in the basement. Furthermore, a billionaire's net worth completely ignores the actual comings and goings of the companies they head. At the end of the day, net worth doesn't mean that a billionaire has just wads of cash to throw around. A billionaire's net worth signifies the amount of success he has in business dealings. Like I said, it's a score, not a bank account balance. But there's something more insidious at play here. I said before that the net worth measures business success, so, arguably, the billionaires with the highest net worth are the most successful at business. Ergo, if we examine the business practices of these billionaires, we can examine what it takes to be successful in business, right? Right now, we live in a society, specifically a society built on capitalism. If we examine the highest net worth billionaires, then we can examine the proposed morality of the system working at its most efficient and successful, the cream of the crop, the top products of capitalism. It stands to reason that the people most successful at a system would be emblematic of its virtues, wouldn't it? Let's take a peek. I'm going to be using the Investopedia's Top 5 Richest Men article for this examination as a list. Number 5, Larry Ellison, founder of Oracle. This gentleman is not a household name like some of the others on this list, so let's examine his business. Oracle is the second largest software company behind Microsoft, started in 1977 by Larry Ellison, Bob Miner, and Ed Oates. They're one of the many Silicon Valley startups that made it big, and they advertise this notably on their website. The specifics of what they do are pretty broad, even their Wikipedia page entry is pretty dense. You might know them for making the Java software, the one that's always updating. At first glance, this seems like it would support the idea that capitalism is good. A small startup made 3 men prosperous by their own ingenuity. Let's take a closer look. Oracle's webpage is pretty lame. The corporate tab is full of nonsense business words, the classic stuff that ultimately doesn't convey anything at all about the company. Quote, Oracle's corporate culture values teamwork, quality, and collaboration, they allege. Clicking on the quote takes the user to a page talking about their aforementioned culture. They have a diverse array of photographs of people, presumably employees, and beneath they mention their various employment values. Quote, everyone is valued. Veterans do great work. Corporate citizenship. From their own mouth, they certainly seem like quite the stand-up company, don't they? According to CNBC.com, the Department of Labor in the U.S. accused Oracle of workplace discrimination in 2019. A quote from CNBC. Quote, the complaint builds on a 2017 lawsuit in the DOL's Office of Federal Contract Compliance filed in 2017 alleging Oracle systematically paid white male workers more than their peers who were women or people of color. This suit stayed later into the year to allow the Department of Labor and Oracle to mediate the dispute. The Department of Labor is now renewing its claims that Oracle discriminates in its compensation and hiring practices and even alleges the company destroyed evidence. This is from January 2019. In a rare public display of the alleged bias against female minority tech workers, the Labor Department made its case in a hearing Thursday that Oracle underpaid female, Asian, and Black employees working in certain roles in its Silicon Valley headquarters by $401 million over the course of 4 years, one of the largest federal anti-discrimination lawsuits to go before a judge. That quote was from Washington Post. In April, another discrimination case. 3 women won a sex discrimination class action with over 4,000 claimants. This is from Bloomberg. A California state judge certified the class action on Thursday, allowing the lawsuit to advance on behalf of more than 4,000 women who claim the database giant pays men more for doing the same job. This doesn't look so good. So far, Oracle, the company that made the 5th richest man in the world, discriminates against its employees enough to warrant federal lawsuits and class actions with 4,000 claimants. Oops! Let's take a look at number 4 and his company. Number 4, Warren Buffett, investor. Many people likely know the name Warren Buffett, but perhaps do not know what he's done, not to be confused with Jimmy Buffett. Sure, I said Warren Buffett was an investor, but what does that mean specifically in his case? Investors, as defined by Investopedia, are, quote, an investor puts capital to use for long-term gain. Investors typically generate returns by deploying capital as either equity or debt investments. Okay, great. What the fuck does that mean for those in the audience who don't want a college course? Basically, investors give money to companies based on the promise that the company will earn more money for them later. Does that sound kind of fucked up? That the number 4 richest man in the world got his money by simply sitting around and giving his money to others only to leech off them later in the long run? Warren, unlike number 5 Larry, was not a do-it-yourself capitalist. Warren here's father, Howard Buffett, was a fellow stockbroker and a Republican representative in the 50s in Nebraska. Warren was given a job in his grandfather's grocery store and had early access to various resources in the business of investing, such as a 3-year business degree his father urged him to take. He also presumably had access to his father's networks and some resources from him as well. So the man makes his millions on the backs of other businessmen. So what? He is putting money into those business ventures, right? He's not hurting anyone. Well, a quote from thenation.com. Buffett makes no secret of his fondness for monopoly. He repeatedly highlights the key to his personal fortune, finding businesses surrounded by a monopoly moat and keeping competitors at bay. Quote, we think in terms of that moat and the ability to keep its width and the impossibility of being crossed, Buffett told the annual Berkshire Hathaway meeting in 2000. We tell our managers we want the moat widened every year. This widening of the moat refers to competition. One of the core tenets of capitalism, particularly that of libertarians and objectivists, is fair competition, the so-called free market. But repeatedly, we see the market becoming less and less free by those who would love to ensure that industry is as homogeneous as possible. It's the capitalism paradox. People want to make money in the free market, but a free, fair market occurs and bad actors inevitably corrupt it. At the end of the day, Warren Buffett is a billionaire. Number 3, Bernard Arnault. Who's this guy? Not even Spellcheck knows his last name. Bernard is from France, the only non-American on his list. His wealth is a little more straightforward than 4 and 5. He owns several luxury brands, including Louis Vuitton, Hennessy, and Sephora. Specifically, his company is called LVMH, or LVM, and it's built on his success. According to Glamour.com, Louis Vuitton's new Texas company got a 75% 10-year tax abatement for opening its new factory. This is pretty much fucked up to begin with, not just because Donald Trump was at the ribbon-cutting ceremony, but it begs the question, if Louis Vuitton is a luxury brand, why do they have factories? There's a popular myth about luxury brands that you can see perpetuated in the media, that luxury brands are more expensive because they use better products or produce smaller amounts of products. This would theoretically increase demand and lower supply, making the price rise. Simple, right? Well, scarcity often increases an item's price, but this does not always mean that it's an indication of quality. According to CBS News, quote, a handful of conglomerates are selling handbags marked up by as much as 20 times what they cost to make, with Oliver Cabell this summer planning to sell bags for about $200 to $300 that would typically retail for $900 to $1,800, according to Glossy. This isn't even to mention the problem with artificial scarcity, when companies withhold products purposefully so suppliers want to have enough to sell. The markups that companies like Louis Vuitton use to make their products inaccessible status symbols, while other handmade products, even and especially ones with quality craftsmanship and materials, have been sold for much less. I couldn't see similar handbags selling on Etsy for thousands of dollars, even though they have similar quality and craftsmanship. It's an empty markup. It's money for nothing. It's often joked about that the same bag without the logo would only cost $50, but that's probably more true than people like to think about. You're buying a brand, not a product. So far in Our Richest Men in the World, we have a businessman with incompetent discrimination, a capitalist parasite, and a man whose brands are built on artificial markups. So far, so good. Number 2, Bill Gates. Bill Gates is probably the one most people know. He's the Microsoft guy. He's the philanthropist. He's the guy who can leap over an office chair at a standing position. Everyone seems to sort of like this guy. Much like number 5, Larry, Bill Gates and his company Microsoft is one of the tech giants that came from Silicon Valley. People love to opine about how great Bill Gates is and that he's a self-made billionaire. He's the model people use when people talk about exceptionalism and when they defend capitalism. They pat Bill on the back for his philanthropism, but usually fail to identify what specifically he's done. Don't worry, that's what I'm here for. You might have heard of the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, which is what people primarily refer to about this. Hey, it's also chaired by Warren Buffett from number 4. Nice. There are, however, issues with philanthropy. According to Valerie Strauss of Washington Post, quote, in February 2019, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation's annual letter was published and addressed 9 things that the couple said surprised them along their philanthropic journey. This was surprise number 8. Textbooks are becoming obsolete. The two then discuss the issue, not actually proving that textbooks are becoming obsolete, possibly because they aren't, but instead talking up the virtues of online education. Why would the founder of Microsoft want to tout online education? One could argue that Bill means well, but it's certainly biased to suggest textbooks are becoming obsolete, coming from the computer man. A lot of people think that philanthropy is just done for a tax write-off or for virtue signaling, but I don't think that's the case. In the 2000s, Bill Gates actively tried to step away from Microsoft to work on the foundation. I don't think Bill Gates personally is a bad person, but that doesn't mean he doesn't contribute to problems inherent in a capitalist society. The Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation is great, but they were founded on riches amassed by Bill Gates himself on the backs of his Microsoft employees, and we'll get to Microsoft. At the end of the day, philanthropy is another business venture. It might be created with the purpose of helping issues in communities like the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, quote, globally to enhance healthcare and reduce extreme poverty, and, in the U.S., to expand educational opportunities and access to information technology. But the more than 2 decades of its existence, this foundation has not impacted these problems significantly. I think it's good that the foundation has done specific things like grants to public schools, but at the end of the day, tossing money at problems doesn't make the world a better place. What the world of healthcare and schools need are increased legislation to their benefits, things like more annual funding rather than grants and ease of access medical care, like every other developed country. Now let's talk about Microsoft. Jesus, where to begin? While Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation was helping healthcare, Microsoft was developing software for the military and border enforcement in the U.S., according to TheGuardian.com. In 2019, a protest was held by Microsoft employees against a $480 million augmented reality deal with the U.S. government. Quote, the employee protest is the latest manifestation of a growing labor movement in the U.S. technology industry. Employees at companies including Microsoft, Google, Amazon, and Salesforce are increasingly speaking out about their own working conditions and about the uses to which their employees put their product. According to CNN.com, in September 2019, there was a protest at a Microsoft branch in New York against Microsoft's deal with ICE. The demonstrators staged a sit-in at the Microsoft store on Fifth Avenue to demand the tech company stop allowing U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, aka ICE, to use their technology, according to a press release from the Close the Camps NYC coalition that organized the protest. Honestly, there's an entire Wikipedia page dedicated to the criticism of Microsoft, for fuck's sake. I'll link it in the description. Number 1, Jeff Bezos. Here he is. You knew he was coming. Jeffy B, Big Funky Bezos, the big bad Bezos himself. Jeff Bezos is the richest man in the world, a net worth of $116 billion. If his dollars were seconds, he would have 3,677 years. It's difficult to grasp the scope of a number this large, yet here he is. I'm glad he was saved for last on this list, because he is the most despicable of the bunch. If you'd like a detailed account of this motherfucker, check out the PBS documentary Amazon Empire. It goes into excruciating detail about this man's company. Sure, Amazon might have made it easy to bring products to our doors. It might have revolutionized online shopping and made many amenities available to us, but the price tag for that was not small. Not only is Amazon unopposed in the US except for niche shopping solutions like eBay, but its treatment of workers is now infamous. Also, for all you free market lovers out there, Amazon is anything but. It practices so much competitive hindrance it's not funny. These fucks copyrighted clicking. I'm not joking. The feature on their site, one-click purchase, is copyrighted by Amazon and no one else is allowed to use it. Again, like Microsoft, Amazon has a controversies page, but Amazon's list makes Microsoft look like a misbehaving schoolboy. I implore you to read it all for yourself. There's too much to cover in a video like this. Let's skip straight to the one they're most famous for, treatment of workers. According to the Register, on March 30th, 2020, Amazon fired Chris Smalls, a worker at its Staten Island, New York warehouse, who had organized a protest demanding more protection for workers amid the coronavirus outbreak. Smalls was later fired by allegedly breaking pandemic procedure. This is only the most recent in Amazon's long trend of resisting unionization. According to Business Insider, Amazon-owned Whole Foods uses corporate tools like heat maps to indicate which stores are most likely to unionize. Amazon has repeatedly referred to union risk, and a leaked training video is shown discouraging unionization. A quote from the video, "We are not anti-union, but we are not neutral either. We do not believe unions are in the best interests of our customers or shareholders, or most importantly, our associates." Let me translate this for you. We are anti-union, but we want to make you feel better. And these people should be unionizing because they're working in horrid conditions. They didn't even have air conditioning in sweltering factories until public backlash became heated. Honestly, like I said, read some of this yourself. I might as well just read the Wikipedia page at this point. I said it before. This stands to reason that the people most successful at a system would be emblematic of its virtues. The system we have, operating as it has produced these 5 men, white men, I should specify, who have risen to the top using practices in their companies that I've outlined above. 5 case studies in brief of the matter in which people become exceptional in our wonderful capitalist system. These 5 men are the best at it, and while I can't opine to the character of these fellas, it's clear from their business trends that no matter how nice they might be, they have harmed our world. I haven't even spoken about the pollution, the propaganda, the cultural impact. This was all from information I researched on Google and Wikipedia. This is the most surface-level information available to me and anyone else with internet connection. This is the world we live in, where 5 men can rise to power in such a way, using exploitation and cutting corners when it comes to business practices. This is the world we live in, a world built by human beings to prop up these 5 men and the others like them. I'm not trying to convince anyone who doesn't believe this to already be true. I'm just trying to underline it for those who already believe. I'm trying to explain that now, as capitalism lays dying, gasping for air, we need to rise up and stomp it out. Now more than ever, organized protests and causes for equality need to be supported. These problems, discrimination, exploitation, sexism, are all perpetuated by the people at the top as demonstrated by these 5 men. Thank you for listening. I hope my words inspire those listening to do what they can. All of the sources I use for this video are in the description. I know this isn't what I usually do. I usually do like media analysis, but I just started researching this stuff and I was alarmed at how easy it was to find out all of this crap about these fucking companies. So again, thank you for listening. Black Lives Matter, trans rights. I hope everyone has a great day.